Hey one, hey all, welcome to Monday, and of course that means it's countdown day here on the channel, and I've never wanted to go as fast as I want to go today because our topic, as voted on by fans all across social media, is going to be the top 10 Transformers race cars. Not sports cars, there's a difference. Top 10 Transformers race cars. That's going to be our focus this time around in the latest GotBot Countdown. Hey one, hey all, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, your most humble of hosts, Dennis Moulton, aka GotBot. As always, man, please like, comment, share, of course, subscribe while you're at it, my baby. And hit that notification bell. It helps me out a ton and it lets you know when content of all sorts goes up here on the channel. Check out Machinery of Man, The Everything Factor, all the groups that I'm either a mod or an admin for, as well as all of my social media links, all that in the description down below. Also in the description down below, and if you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. Before I get into anything else, I'm going to give a slight apology here. This listing is a little bit rushed, if I'm being perfectly honest, because this time of year at my day job is super duper busy. So I didn't want to miss a week of the countdown, but I am having to kind of try and sort of squeeze it in this week. So bear with me just a little bit. We had, of course, votes come from all across social media, all over the place. The problem is that some people voted for sports cars and tried to defend that choice by saying, well, you know, it was street racing. Street racing is largely, generally, illegal in most places, so it did not count. Just because something is a sports car does not make it a race car. So the way that it worked was like this. If it had, you know, like numbers and sponsors and what, like it was a race car, then it was a race car. In some other cases, with some of the other votes, I scoured to see if there were definitions somewhere depicting it as an actual race car, or if the descriptions described it as a sports car. If all descriptions described it as a sports car, then it didn't count. If descriptions would define it as a race car, then it counted, even though there was a bit of mishmashiness between the two. So the honorable mentions today are a little bit different. We have 4 honorable mentions. All of these got votes, but all of these, really, through everything that I found, were listed as sports cars. A couple of them did have street racing credentials, and one of them was part of races apparently on Velocitron in the comics or something. I don't know. I don't know anything about Velocitron. I don't know anything about any of that. Or the comics. It's not my jam. But I acknowledge that. Nevertheless, when I would look up descriptions of it, it was described as a sports car rather than a race car. I know it's a little wishy-washy, so let's do the honorable mentions first. First honorable mention would be Wild Rider. Wild Rider, certainly a Stunticon who has a pretty sleek alt mode, but he is not a race car. He is a sports car, but he is not a race car. I couldn't find any description of him that would reference him as a race car, even though there were times that he would partake in races, illegal races usually. But that's different than being an actual race car. So Wild Rider got some votes. So did G2 Soundwave. I like that. And so did Sunstreaker. Now G2 Soundwave, to be fair, is a race car, but he didn't get enough votes, so he's in the honorable mentions. So Sunstreaker and Wild Rider, sports cars but not race cars. G2 Soundwave, a race car but didn't get enough votes. And the last honorable mention would be Transformers Prime Knockout. Consistently described as a sports car, somewhat resembling an Aston Martin. But there were people that voted for him who made the argument, yeah, but he was in races on Velocitron. Yes, but he's never described as a race car. He is always consistently described as a sports car, and therefore he wouldn't actually count for this list. He would certainly count for a list of sports cars, but not here. So once again, the summary of the honorable mentions include one race car being G2 Soundwave, and I think he's actually a NASCAR. And Wild Rider, Knockout, and Sunstreaker. Sunstreaker, great sports car, but again, not an actual race car. So, that being said, you know what we're going to do? None of them made the list. We're going to kick things off with number 10 first. So coming in at number 10, we have kind of a surprise to me that was from the live action movie universe. Sadly, I do not have any version of this character from the movies, and I believe that this was an exclusive, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, you cut it, it turned into a concept Formula One, and it is Movieverse Fracture. If you don't know what I'm talking about, back in 2007, the classics Mirage Formula One mold was reused and recolored as Fracture. But in reality, Fracture is an homage to the GotBot Crusher. So number 10, in a way, is an actual race car, and it certainly got the name of Fracture, which is been, a name that's been used several times now within Transformers, but in reality, number 10 was a GotBot of all things, with an analog version, if you will, of Crasher. Whether you're talking Crasher or whether you want to call it Fracture, anyway you cut it, that race car took the number 10 slot. Number 9 sticks with Formula One racers, but takes us this time to the Robots in Disguise 2001 series, or Car Robots, if you will. Again, I don't actually have a version of this character, but he's a very well-known character, and it's Skids. That's Skid-Zad. And when he came to Earth, basically, he scanned a Formula One racer, and apparently he was supposed to purge it first so that he didn't get residual psychotropic energy or something. It was really weird, but basically he started taking on the characteristic competitive traits of the original race car driver who had driven the car he scanned. Really strange how that worked out. His behavior became erratic. He became obsessed with racing. Race car, obsessed with racing. So much so that he illegally entered some races, including the Europa 400, some weird name like that of a race that took place in Europe, and won the thing, even though he couldn't actually win the thing. When you are a race car whose personality is affected by a race car driver, and you enter races, whether legally and officially or illegally and unofficially, everything about your existence centers around racing, from your body type to your mindset. How can you not appear on this list? Skids from our idea of Car Robots takes the number 9 slot. Now, number 8 to me is a very iffy one that I actually end up having to look up. Some people voted for the G1 version of this guy. Some people voted for the animated version of this guy. And some people voted for the Cyberverse version of this guy. And it is none other than Hot Rod. And I thought to myself and said, I don't think Hot Rod would really be able to earn a spot on this list because he's a sports car. But wouldn't you know it, when I look up Hot Rod, the description I see is that he is a futuristic race car. Not a futuristic sports car, a futuristic race car. Now, of course, his alt mode is not a real alt mode, but it is described fairly consistently as race car, which makes sense because the guy is always trying to be the fastest, be the slickest. In fact, as I am led to believe, he even beat Blur in a race in the comics. Hard to argue with a guy who has such a high competitive streak, who has won races, and whose alt mode is officially described as a futuristic race car. Hot Rod, for right or wrong, took the number 8 slot. I think, as you're about to see, number 7 is very ironic because number 7 is none other than Blur. That's right, we just talked about Blur in relation to Hot Rod. Well, some people voted, a lot of people voted for the IDW version of Blur. By the way, this mold is being kind of redone for the Velocitron series to be a version of IDW Blur, for right or wrong, successful or not. Some people voted for the G1 Blur. Some people voted for the Studio Series Blur. Some people voted for the animated Blur. Actually, a lot of people also voted for the animated Blur. Again, much like Hot Rod, I wasn't really sure that this guy would count, but when I started looking into his alt mode, he was consistently described as, you guessed it, a futuristic race car. In fact, not only described as a futuristic race car, but described as the fastest car on the planet Earth. As for other planets, he might not always be the fastest, but he certainly tries to be, and he certainly has that competitive streak. When the official fiction, when the official descriptions call this guy a futuristic race car, when versions of him have been in ever so many races, it's hard to argue with overwhelming mountainous evidence that yes, Blur is a race car, and yes, Blur took, based on the votes, the number 7 slot. Coming in at number 6 is a bit of an interesting one because it's Smokescreen. Now, Prowl wouldn't count here because he's not a race car. As well, Blue Streak or Silver Streak, they would not count here because they're not race cars. This guy is. He is a Datsun 280 ZT Turbo, I think it is. I'm going to look at my notes to make sure I'm not saying that wrong. ZX Turbo, sorry. It is a modified version that was based upon, the turbo modified version that was actually based upon a real vehicle that was driven by Dan Devendorf. It was a touring car. It was a race car, and it still is a race car. Smokescreen solidified himself through the votes at the number 6 slot. Ah, yes, and we have once again reached the most coveted of locations, the halfway mark. And at the halfway mark, we go back to Velocitron, and again, one of those wishy-washy ones, but I guess it makes sense, as number 5 is none other than Override. Now, I don't have any version of Override, though I did review I can't even say the original version. I reviewed a recolor of the original version. Pretty good. And if you're wondering who Override is or what Override looks like, you don't have to look any further than the upcoming Velocitron Speedia 500 subset of the Legacy line to see her. And she is consistently described, much like Hot Rod, much like Blur, as a futuristic race car, not a sports car, and it makes sense. Again, I'm not super familiar with the character, but my understanding is that she kind of resides over Velocitron as basically a prime. In fact, sometimes I think she's described as a convoy, Nitro convoy, if I'm not mistaken. And I could be wrong about that. I stand corrected if somebody out there wants to correct me. Like I said, this week I'm doing it really quick, so the research has been a little bit minimal. Nevertheless, I did enough research to realize that she is consistently described as a futuristic race car, therefore she counts, and therefore, based on the vote, she was able to take the number 5 slot. And as we delve into the top 4, number 4 is one that I thought was going to be the top, if not number 2. I thought it was going to be even higher than it was. Sitting at number 4 is Drag Strip. Of course, he is a concept, I believe, again, Formula 1 racer. The one with the 6 tires. This was based on a real vehicle that I don't think ended up lasting. Nevertheless, he is undoubtedly a race car. In fact, as 3 voters pointed out, it's in his name, Drag Strip. Like, it's right there in the guy's name. He is a car. He's named after a car. He is racing. He's named after racing. How can you deny that Dragstrip deserves to be on this list? And enough fans felt the same way that he took the number 4 slot. Now here we are at number 3, and number 3 is my personal favorite Transformers character. I'm so glad he made the list. It is Wheeljack. Oh yeah, he is again consistently described as a Lancia Stratos Turbo. In fact, he was part of the Group 5 series, whatever, that was used for racing and sported sponsor detail for an Italian airline, I think it was. I think the name Atelier or whatever it is an Italian airline. It was used for, see if I can find it here again. I'm having to reference my stuff here. Group 5 Stratos with sponsored decals for an airline. Yeah, the deco is, and I'm using the TF Wiki to help me with this. The deco is based on a specific racing version, the Group 5 Stratos. So there you go. He is defined as a race car. He sports actually he has sported many numbers, though I think 539 is his official number. He has the sponsored decals. He has been modified to race. He is everything a race car should be, and enough fans felt the same way, including myself, that he was able to take the number 3 slot. Coming in at number 2, we have another kind of street vehicle that was modified and used in racing with Jazz. Of course, we all know he's a Porsche 935. Actually, he is Martini Porsche 935 76, and he won some sort of 1976 World Championship of Makes or something. It was a actual race car. This Porsche, well, not this Porsche, but that Porsche, the original Porsche, with all of the Martini racing with the number 4, it was a real race car. It, I guess, is a real race car in the annals of time, and Jazz took that alt mode. He was, is, and I guess ever will be, one heck of a race car, and he took the number 2 slot. And through it all, here we are at that very tippy top, number 1, the pole position, right? That's number 1. I think, I hope. I don't know much about racing or cars, if I'm being perfectly honest. And I think it might be a foregone conclusion. I think it might be somewhat anticlimactic that number 1 is Mirage. I think we all saw this coming, right? Number 1 is Mirage. Yes, this is a weird amalgam. I do have the Siege arms put on the, I call it Earthrise Kingdom Mirage. I don't like the legs of this guy. Nevertheless, undoubtedly a race car. Whether you have the G1, whether you have the Classics, whether you have the Combiner Wars, whether you have the Siege, or whether you have this one, it is always the case that this guy is a race car. I believe a Formula 1, again, I stand to be corrected for that by people who know more about cars than me. The quintessential, not just Autobot race car, but the quintessential Decepticon race car, the quintessential Transformers race car. To be fair, the Autobot that got the highest votes was this guy. The Decepticon that got the highest votes, of course, was Dragstrip. Makes perfect sense, right? Yeah, I get it, 100%. This guy is everything that a race car Transformer should be, and the fans support it, and he took the number 1 slot. There we go, 10 down to 1. I know that this one I might have stumbled over some of the things. I might have some of the race cars and stuff actually incorrect. I apologize. Like I said, my time is very crunched and I'm trying to do this for you guys so that we don't miss a countdown. That is the votes. We separated sports car from race car. Some others that got votes would include Tailspin, the G1 Barricade, who was a Micromaster, Swindler, Road Hauler, Fastlane. It's in his name, Fastlane, right? Road King, Transformers Prime Smokescreen, the Cybertron Megatron, which I wasn't sure about, but when I looked it up, futuristic sports cars, one of his modes. Movie Barricade and Slapdash. The Movie Wreckers, like all of them got individual votes. Some people tried to vote for the Movie Wreckers as a whole, and I said, no, you gotta be specific, but like Topspin got some, you know, Roadbuster got some, so on and so forth, right? So, yeah, those and more. I'm sure there was a lot even left out. There you go, 10 down to 1. Once again, I really hope that I was able to bring it together here. Like I said, I know my time was pressed. Let me know if your favorites made the list or not. I appreciate you coming by, giving me some of your extremely valuable time. I do know how important it is to you. If you're in a position to help the channel to grow, you can use the donate link. You can check us out on Patreon. You can see what we have to offer to you through Spring, or of course, you can hit the join button right here on YouTube and become a channel member. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, stick around, have some fun with us here on the channel. Also, don't forget that somehow, some way, each and every single day, each and every single one of you do make a difference, and I look forward to the next time that you and I get together to have another visit, either in the live streams on Thursday nights at the stop motion premieres, or the old-fashioned way right here inside the videos.